Okay, class, in the last video, we ended with looking at this picture here, gray commissure right here, surrounding this central canal. See, it's narrowed down a lot. Remember, we had a central canal way back here, but see, as you grew and got older, it narrowed down. Still a little bit of cerebrospinal fluid in there, but not much. Okay, let's see what we have next. So here again is a cross section of the spinal cord, right there, showing the meninges and showing spinal nerves coming off. Spinal nerves coming off here. Right here is the dorsal root ganglion we'll be talking about. And so we're coming off this spinal cord right there. But we're going to be more concerned with the spinal cord in this video. See, once we get to this here, we're in the peripheral nervous system, which is really another chapter. So we're really more interested in just getting you through this spinal cord here. Okay. Now, here again is showing the coverings of the spinal cord. The Dura Mater, okay. Pia Mater directly adherent, and then the arachnoid layer, which is this here. Remember, the subarachnoid space is where everything is. Here again is the dorsal median sulcus and the ventral median fissure. Now, when we're using this, you can use dorsal or you can use posterior. Ventral, you can use anterior. Okay? Here's that dorsal root ganglion again. Okay? All right, let's go a little further. All right, now we're talking about gray matter. All right, now let's go back to our last video. We said in gray matter, most of the neurons were not myelinated. In gray matter, most of the neurons were not myelinated. All right, so I'm going to come to this picture here. What I want you to notice here is this. Okay. I want you to realize the white matter has columns that go up and down. The white matter. And the gray matter has horns. Now, I'm going to use this picture here. The white matter is this here in this model. This picture of this model. That's white matter up in here. Okay? White matter, we'll say, has a bunch of myelinated neurons. Has a bunch of myelinated neurons. Gray matter would be this here, which would be non-myelinated neurons and cell bodies, because you never have myelin around cell bodies. Okay, gray matter, white matter on the outside here, surrounding this. Okay, now the gray matter is thrown into something we call horns. It's really a two-dimensional thing. Gray matter is two-dimensional. In other words, if you were standing up and the spinal cord was up, you could just move your hand across in a lateral fashion. The gray matter deals with a lateral fashion. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Right here, coming out of the gray matter, that's where you'll get these nerves coming out. So coming out of that gray matter is where you're going to get these nerves. See, at each level, so that's why it's I'm going to say 2D. At each level, you have a nerve. Then another. Remember, we had 31 bilateral, 31, 62 bilateral. So gray matter is thrown into what I'm going to call horns, like this is Texas. Hey, you know what a horn is, like on a cow. So right here is what we call the dorsal horn. That right there. The dorsal horn. Okay. Right here would be the ventral horn, and in some parts of the cord, you have a lateral horn. So you have a dorsal horn, or posterior horn, some would call it, an anterior horn, a ventral horn, and in certain areas of the cord, you have a lateral horn, and that would be true on both sides. So the gray matter is thrown into horns. Okay? Now, I'm not interested in the dorsal root, because, again, that's going to be in the peripheral nervous system. Okay? So we go a little further. Okay. So white matter there, but gray matter is thrown into horns. Okay? And then I'm going to come back to what this is about in a moment there. I'm going to come back to this. But always remember, all sensory comes in through the back and motor comes out through the front. All sensory comes in through the back and motor comes out through the front. I will say something on this since I'm saying that. Okay, sensory coming in through the back. So neurons would be in here coming in. When we get to the peripheral nervous system, see, really, once here is the peripheral. We're going to do that after we do the brain deal. All right. Here would be where you come into with somatic sensory. Now, let's talk about SS, somatic sensory. What did we say somatic sensory did? More of the body wall, the skin, which would be the epidermis, the dermis, and so forth like that. Stuff coming in from like the bladder and the intestine is a visceral sensory. See, the card is very specialized. So these are visceral sensory, like stretch on your bladder or the intestine. Okay. Now, as far as motor comes out through the front. So what we have is visceral motor, which is basically autonomic motor. Starts here, the first neuron when we get to it. And somatic motor, the first neuron going to skeletal muscle, starts here. But both of these come out through the front. So I want you to read heavily on this. All sensory comes through the back, motor exits through the front. All sensory comes through the back, motor exits through the front. Okay? All right. Now this one here, I'm not going to get into that. That's getting a little more detail than you would need in this course here. But I've used this for a little higher level course. Okay? So I'm going to come here. Now I'm coming to white matter. White matter. Okay, remember the white matter was out here. Now the white matter is where you're going to find tracts. The white matter is what? Where you're going to find tracts. Okay, so the white matter is like in columns going up and down the cord. The white matter, I'm going to say it again, is in columns. See, gray matter was in a 2D across. The white matter is in columns because things go up and down, and that's going to be called tracts in a minute. All right, so I'm going to start with this drawing I tried to put. Anything back here between that line and that line, I'm going to say is in the posterior column or posterior white column. It's going to all make sense when I get further. This is my posterior white column. Anything from this line I drew to that line is going to be in my lateral column. And that'd be true on both sides. And anything, let's say, between these two lines I drew is in my anterior or ventral column. But remember, the columns only involve the white matter. The columns only involve what? Just the white matter. Just the white matter. All right. Now, what is in these columns? What's so important about these columns? This is where you get these tracts. These tracts. Okay. And basically, let's look at a tract is a cluster of fibers, of axons. A tract is a cluster of fibers in the central nervous system. A cluster is axon fibers. Matter of fact, I can put that. Maybe I should have put it. And we kind of brought this up before. So a tract is a cluster of axons in the central nervous system, CNS. And it's really going to be a cluster of, I'm going to go a little further, myelinated axons in the central nervous system. Okay? Myelinated. So it's a cluster of myelinated axons in the central nervous system. And these myelinated axons go up and down the cord. Going up the cord is ascending. That's sensory. Going down the cord is descending. See, they have to be myelinated because it has to travel fast. See, if you're at the 2D area, just two-dimensional, you're only going that far. card is about 1 inch across. So you're only going that far. You don't need miles. But if you're going up and down the card, it's, think about it. Even a short person, that's a little distance. So you need those fast myelinated neurons. Okay? So the tracts then, let's come here. These are you're looking at kind of some of the tracts that we have. So we have motor tracts that go down because you're going from the brain down basically through the card to turn something on. Glands, muscles. Sensory goes up. Sensory goes up. So see, they're showing these, in this picture, motor tracts in red and sensory tracts basically in blue. Okay? So we have ascending and descending. Okay, let's talk about, then we have transverse commissural, cross from one side to the other. Now to do that though, you go in here between these sides here, these commissural tracts. Okay? Tracts are located in the 3 white columns. Also, these columns can be called funiculi, which is like a ribbon. Funiculi. But most will just call them columns, but you can call them funiculi. Each spinal tract is composed of axons with similar functions. They do similar things. Okay? So the white matter again is out here. See, here is showing the gray, and out here is the white, and it's thrown into tracts. All right, let's talk about tracts again. Custom myelinated axon central nervous system. Tracts are named, so now we're trying to name the tracts from origin to destination. Example, corticospinal. Cortex of brain to spine. Motor is a descending tract. Spinothalamic, sensory, from the spine to the thalamus, which is an area of the brain that's sensory, that's ascending. Okay, let's go over here. So, corticospinal, you see, what color is it in? Red. Spinothalamic, let's find the spinothalamic. Spinocerebellum, spinothalamic, see it's in blue, going up. Okay, let's come back again. Each axon of the tract does the same function. Like, for example, the lateral, well, we'll be looking at the lateral spinothalamic tract is for pain and temperature, let's say. The lateral spinothalamic. So, when we look at it, you have these, okay. Now, if 2 tracts have the same origin and destination, they're doing different things, but they have the same origin to destination, then the column needs to be named. For example, the anterior corticospinal. The anterior corticospinal. Okay? So we have a lateral corticospinal and an anterior. See, both are going from the cortex to the spine. So they both have the same origin and destination, but they do different things. The lateral, see, these tracts here are going to work with your skeletal muscles. So the lateral corticospinal tract sends neurons primarily to your arms and legs, whereas the anterior, to skeletal muscle, arm, leg, whereas the anterior does more of the trunk skeletal muscles. Okay? But they still are going from what? The same origin to destination. Okay? Spinothalamic. Lateral generally is pain and temperature. Anterior, some will say, is more touch and pressure. But they got the same origin to what? Destination. So tracts. Learn tracts. Ascending and what? Descending. Ascending and descending. Let's go a little further. Okay? We're gonna end right here and start another one. At number 17.